Namaste. Welcome to Chiti Media. I'm Kamal Madi Shetty, your host for today, and this is a very special episode of the Vaishali Dialogue, a long-form panel discussion that we do on Chiti on important national and international issues. And the topic under discussion today is China's biggest political event in 5 years, which is about to take place very soon, starting the 16th of October, and that is the Chinese Communist Party's 20th Party Congress, where Xi Jinping is expected to get an unprecedented third term in power. To discuss this and understand what this event means for China, for Taiwan, for the larger Indo Pacific region and the world in general, we have a very special panel of experts who have not only researched about these issues, but also have a first hand experiences of visiting and living in China and Taiwan. Our first panelist we have with us is Dr. Sriparna Pathak ji. She is an associate professor at the Jindal School of International Affairs and is founding director of the the Center for Northeast Asia Studies at the OP Jindal Global University. She also has a PhD in Chinese Studies from JNU in Delhi. Namaste, Sriparna ji. Welcome to Chiti Media. My second panelist today is Dr. Manoj Panigrahi. He is an assistant professor again at the Jindal School of International Affairs and has a PhD from National Chengche University in Taipei, which is the capital of Taiwan. He's also a co-director of the Center for Northeast Asia Studies at JGU. Namaste, Manoj ji. Welcome to Chiti Media.
Namaste.
Our third panelist today is Namrata Hasija ji. She is a research associate at the Center for China Analysis and Strategy, India's foremost think tank on China studies, and also former president of the Taiwan Alumni Association, and is also doctoral candidate at the Department of East Asian Studies of University of Delhi. Namaste, Namrata ji. Welcome to Chiti Media. Thank you so much to all our panelists today for joining. And before I begin this conversation, I wanted to congratulate Dr. Pathak and Dr. Panigrahi for their new book, which I have in my hand, which is called The Drifts and Dynamics, Russia's Ukraine War and Northeast Asia. This was recently launched and had a book launch event on the 10th of this month. Namrata ji was also there and she was moderating that discussion. So if I could begin this conversation, Sriparna ji, if you could tell us a little bit about the book and also what made you write this book.
So thank you so much, Kamal, for having us on board and for that warm welcome and for the interest in our book. So why this book is because, a lot of things have changed since February 24th this year. The Russian aggression in Ukraine has dragged on for almost 8 months. And there are a lot of different strategies which are being adopted by the international community. What is happening is that countries across the world, based on their own national interests, are responding to this unfurling crisis. The crisis again being in Europe the way it was in the last two world wars as well. Northeast Asia is a very important region. And it's important because, there's North Korea, which is definitely a revisionist state. And there's always a fear of nuclear war taking place thanks to North Korea. Then there is China, which again also is a revisionist power and which wants to shape the international system according to its own rules. Then there are other important players like Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, all economically important and have different sorts of roles in international relations. So what we do in this book is that we try and trace the sort of responses that these countries have had. And if you see, there's a huge divergence between the response of each country. So North Korea is one of the only 5 countries in the world which has openly supported China. As contrasted to that is South Korea, which has voted to condemn Russian invasion of Ukraine and to suspend Russia's membership in the United Nations Human Rights Council. Japan's response has been outright condemnation, and it has gone a step ahead of, say, South Korea. In addition to multilateral sanctions against Russia, Russia has also levied its own sanctions against Russia. For Taiwan, the issue is that it's not just right now the destabilizing effects of this whole war on the international system, there's also a huge fear that China can copy this Russian-style aggression in Taiwan and try to take over it by force. Um, so these responses are very dynamic in nature, and even within countries. I haven't even spoken about China because China's response is going to, probably take a very long time. Just to give a sort of idea, China has been very dubious in its responses. And on the one hand, it shows that it's abstaining from, it does not want to take sides. But domestically, if you look at its social media or state-controlled media, it's pulling its full weight behind Putin, and trying to call out Western hegemony for trying to crush countries like Russia and China. So even within each country, the responses have evolved over a particular point of time, over a particular period of time. So we wrote this book because it becomes important for India, or Indians in particular, to understand the different sorts of responses, so that we can understand where we could align our interests with. Is there a similarity with our responses? What sort of national interest do these Northeast Asian countries have? Because this region is so important for India as well, and India's foreign policy, India's whole approach to international relations. We thought we'll collect information and at least um, jot down points, give a little analysis of what has happened in the first 6 months. Hence this book.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pathak. I think that's a very interesting book, and I think the most interesting part of this book is that it's come out very soon. I mean, the conflict and the happening in Ukraine is still unfolding, and I think it's very interesting to actually look at an analysis and look at various countries, how they are responding at this stage. And like you mentioned, Taiwan, I think, is going to be one of the most interesting questions that I also hope to discuss with the panel today. If I can begin this conversation with you, Namrata ji, the party congress is here. It's going to start on the 16th of October, and I think it's going to go on for about a week or so. But of course, it's split up in different ways, and different meetings will be held. But there's the all-important first day speech by Xi Jinping that is expected on the first day. So before we go into all of that, I wanted to ask you: is it almost given now that Xi Jinping is headed for a third term, or is there any scope whatsoever for any sort of a surprise?
Thank you for the question, Kamal. I think if you ask me, I think he's there for the third term. He's definitely coming back. The What we need to analyze probably is whether he's coming uh, he's coming stronger. How has he expanded his power base? Whether he's expanded it or not, and you know, so whether only his men will be given, positions in the Politburo Standing Committee or Politburo. I think these are the probably issues that we are analyzing now, because I think it's a given fact that, like at least to me, and I think I don't know about maybe my co-panelists, but that he's coming back. And I think what I feel is that he's actually preparing for not only another term as China's leader, but there are also reports that are circulating in China that claim that he may even be designated as chairman at the upcoming 20th Party Congress. And that is like, that will be the second person to have it. The first was, of course, Mao. So that would place him at par with Mao Zedong. And I think over the years, if you see after Xi Jinping has come, that's what um, he's been probably he's always comparing himself or showing himself as equivalent, or maybe at some places he cannot say he's uh, you know uh, as Mao, equivalent to Mao, because I happened to visit the Shanghai Party School, and this was right before COVID, which was in 2019. I visited the party school in Shanghai, and there when you enter, I mean, if people, for people who have been there before and people who have been there after Xi Jinping came to power, they can see the difference, because I saw a lot of changes. Now, there were only photographs of Mao or Xi Jinping. only when the videos were being played in the party this thing school, when you go up, there's a small, like, they've made a museum sort of a thing where they kind of enact first meeting that happened in Shanghai and all those things. So there the videos are only Mao or Xi Jinping. The quotes that are, you have those standees, so the quotes that are there are only of Mao and Xi Jinping. It's like there was no leader after Mao, that can be revered as in the party, this thing. So I think these changes have been there, and to me I think these things are very important to note when we are studying China. So I think this my analysis is that he's back, and probably will be designated as a chairman.
Right. Thank you, Namrata ji. I think that's a good overview. I think for us to analyze what's going to happen next. And I just wanted to get some other thoughts as well, Dr. Pathak. Do you agree that she is all set? And also, if you could explain to our viewers what is the significance of the party congress? I mean, how big of an event is this?
Thanks, Kamal. So you see, the 20th Party Congress is very important because, see, party congresses happen and a report, it's like a report card of what has happened in the last 5 years. So Xi Jinping will be presenting the work report and he'll be talking about what all has happened. And Xi Jinping, or China under Xi Jinping, has had the habit of just completely brushing things which don't work in Xi Jinping's favor under the carpet. So it's all going to be probably like, oh, we have eradicated poverty, oh, common prosperity is taking place, etc. It's a report card of the last 5 years, and it's a blueprint for the next 5 years. If you have noticed in the last couple of years since COVID-19, China has just become more and more aggressive in international politics. So while this 20th Party Congress is definitely very important for understanding where domestic politics is headed, it also has implications for China's foreign policy. And given the fact that China is an important player, we may or may not like it. The thing is, it has implications for the whole world. So, which is why it's important to watch this 20th Party Congress very closely. Again, why is this important? A lot of people who are currently in the Politburo, their retirement age, either they've reached their retirement age or they are just around the corner. So a lot of personnel changes are going to happen. For example, Wang Yi, under whom wolf warrior diplomacy took huge shape, he is set to retire. Like, is he going to take some other post? Is the retirement age going to get increased at this party congress? These are things which we don't know yet, which is why it is important to watch this out for. If it is not Wang Yi, then who is going to take his place? Is that person going to be as caustic as Wang Yi is, or is he or she going to be more caustic? um, how many women are really going to be there? Because China has also had its Me Too movement. And we've heard about Peng Shuai, who, despite being as famous as she was, didn't really get justice. So there is a Me Too movement there. So how many women are really going to be there as part of, the Politburo Standing Committee? Would they be given power? Would they be given voices? These are all questions which are important, which is why this party congress becomes very important to watch out for. So, I agree with Namrata. And when she said that, Xi Jinping he's going to be there. Why do I say so? Let's just look at some of the things which he has done only in the last month, in the month of September, right? He has, targeted a lot of people who he thinks are not really currying favor with him. So, for example, I'll just take three names. There's Chang Yongze, who was an official indicted on graft charges, and he's from Tibet, at a high level post. Then there was Sun Yuanliang, who was a former senior political advisor of China's northeastern Liaoning province, and he got expelled from the Communist Party of China over violations of discipline and laws, also done by the anti-graft agency in China. Then there was Sun Lijun, who was the former Chinese Vice Minister of Public Security, who was sentenced to death with a 2 year reprieve for taking more than 646 million yuan of bribes. Um, just three names. I'll give just three names, and this happened in the last month. So, uh, Xi Jinping is definitely tightening his control, and there is a lot of question mark with regards to his governance, the way he's, his zero COVID policy, the impact it's had on the economy, etc. So there are these murmurings that there is discontentment, but how is Xi Jinping dealing with this discontentment? People would not be daring after this sort of targeting which has happened. He says he is targeting tigers and flies, and he's not going to tolerate corruption. But is it really corruption, or is he actually going after people who are opposed to his line of thinking? And he, as Namrata said, his policies have been very similar to Mao Zedong's. So, he's adopted a more centralized position. The whole fact that he's running for third term, that in itself shows how powerful he is. For the last 3, 4 months, you see his face plastered on Chinese state-controlled media almost every single day. Even at from the level of the school, children are now being taught Xi Jinping thought. They're being made to parrot. That's the sort of disciplining which is happening all across China. So he is definitely going to stay in power. He's going to remain. Is China going to become more aggressive? Well, if he's reached a certain level of aggression, if he steps down, he's going to appear weak. Could he really
Mm.
do that? So he's not going to do that. So either he's going to be at the same level of aggression, or he's just going to increase it further for two reasons. A, he cannot appear weak. B, he will use more aggression to deflect the audience's attention from the more pressing issues of unemployment, joblessness, inequality, etc., etc. So, um, tough times ahead, in my opinion.
Tough times indeed, and like you mentioned, Sriparna ji, I think the trend of tightening control is here to stay, and we are likely to see that in the domestic realm, but also, like you mentioned, the aggression and assertiveness on the foreign policy front is also very likely to continue. And speaking of foreign policy, I wanted to talk about Taiwan. And Manoj ji, if I can put this question to you, a lot has been happening in and around Taiwan in the last few weeks and months. And this is primarily because, there were very unprecedented military drills that happened around Taiwan, which followed the visit of the US Speaker Nancy Pelosi. So, can you take us through what has been happening in cross-strait relations in the last, particularly couple of months in the run-up to the party congress?
Okay, thank you, Kamalji, for having me. Just to recap what happened briefly, early August, we have Nancy Pelosi, who's the secretary to the House of the Speaker. She came, she visited Taiwan for a week, a couple of days, and then that did cause a lot of anger from the Chinese side, and coming back to that, because of this visit, it gave a good platform for Taiwanese to raise their voice, and especially in US and the Western world. And it did brought some challenges. One of the biggest challenge is the military drill that which followed Nancy Pelosi's visit. It was one of the first times right after, and it is very close by to the Taiwanese shores, especially in the south, which is like near to the one of the southern tip island of Taiwan mainland. It was only like 19 to 20 miles from the main tip of the Kaohsiung city, the port, and it halted the port for some time. There was a halt of air traffic, and it did cause some uneasiness. But again, when we bring in into the chapter of saying like what happened, but the government of Taiwan, which is right now under the President Tsai Ing-wen, they try to maintain calm, try to maintain like not to overreact. And if we go by the local media, what was happening? Yes, there was news about those drills in the local media, but mostly the local media was busy with the upcoming local elections, the mayoral elections that coming up. So that, because Taiwanese have over the years have been living through this sort of threats or this sort of exercises by the Chinese over the years. And so do it earlier. If you look at the pattern of how the Chinese violations in the ADIZ, or the Air Defense Identification Zone, earlier it used to be mostly the air violations, but followed by Nancy Pelosi's visit, there is an increase of also the water violations as well in and around Taiwan. So that may be the possibly the new military normal that may face. And second thing that happened was targeting of the rest of the 14 diplomatic allies that Taiwan have. As recent as a week back, the Nicaraguan president, he asked for a $1 billion of investments from Taiwan to keep the diplomatic relationship alive. So we may see some more poaching by the China for the from the diplomatic allies of Taiwan. So that's one thing. That these are the two major things that happened. All of this, but another thing that happened followed by this threats or the such military drills is that there's a rise of parliamentarians visit. For example, all as recent as last week, we had Indian member of parliament Sujit Kumar from Odisha visiting Taiwan and congratulating President Chai Ing-wen for the double 10th, the 111th year of foundation of ROC as such. So this things is happening. But coming back to the what is the debate between whether the Taiwan should unify or Taiwan should stay normal. If you look into some of the survey details, as recent as 22nd of June of this year, the survey details, I have the numbers where unification of 1.3% of the Taiwanese population surveyed, they want the unification with mainland very soon, and status to maintain the status quo as of now for indefinite period of time, it is 28.3, and to remain the status quo and decide it later, it's 28.6, and to claim Taiwan as an independent country itself, it's the number is quite less, 5.2. So it kind of shows us about what is the current views of the Taiwanese public as such when it comes to cross-strait relations. So mostly they want, and as such, yeah.
Right. Right. Thank you, Manoj. I think, Namrata ji, if I could just ask you to also comment on that, and particularly from the government's point of view in Taiwan. So, how is the Tsai administration in particular looking at the recent developments, and does Taipei have a plan to counter China's coercion, which can happen in a variety of ways, including military and non-military means?
Thank you for the question, Kamal. See, if we are talking about any military confrontation, to me, it sounds difficult for Xi Jinping right now. So I know there has been a lot of discussion recently, especially after the visit, the exercises that were done, because the exercises also kind of broke some norms from the previous ones. Okay, so let me just give you a brief, how do I say, comparison. Okay, so technically speaking, if we say this is the fourth Taiwan Strait crisis, so in 1995-96, which was the third, that is the time when Beijing actually announced the missile test that it would be conducting, targeting an area of some 90 miles off the coast of northern Taiwan. Okay, and this was including BF-15 ballistic missiles. This time, however, the exercises were being held much closer. One of the exercise areas announced by China actually protrude into Taiwan's 24 nautical miles adjacent area and territorial waters. So, and also the difference was that in 1995, after a 5-day advance warning, Chinese naval vessels and aircraft conducted 10 days of live fire test on the mainland coast opposite Taiwan. Now, this time there were more than 100 sorties of military aircrafts having conducted combat training exercises, just as joint resonance and aerial refueling, airspace control, and all that. So, yes, the exercises were different, more aggressive this time. But we also have to understand that even within China, the military reunification is debated. So it is not something the way, like the Economist said that Taiwan is the most dangerous place in the world. It's like jumping the gun for me. I mean, because analyzing what the Chinese elite is saying, they also have a debate about military reunification. So, and at least now with the 20th Party Congress coming, I don't think Xi Jinping would want an unstable environment. Because first, he has to be sure that the victory will be quick and there will be a definite victory. And in this case, he's not sure because he knows that US and Japan are going to intervene. Okay. And also, he has to calculate the cost benefit analysis of that first. He is not worried about Taiwan's defense. What he's worried about is only the US response and Japan. Let's be very frank about it. Because even if you compare the Chinese and Taiwanese army, I mean, even in ground forces, the numbers, the navy, artillery, everything. Like there is a data that suggests that Taiwan has. I mean, there is a little no comparison when it comes to the military strength. So it is the US and basically the US intervention, not so much even as any other thing that China is actually calculating. And the day Xi Jinping realizes that the US will not intervene is the day then probably he will think of this. Right now, at least before the party congress, he will not do anything. He will not, because there are articles, if you read articles in Chinese language media, especially coming from people that matter, even they talk about that it is a big risk that Xi Jinping will not take because there are also domestic issues and domestic issues that he has to think about. Now, how does Taiwanese government react to it? See, the Taiwanese government, of course, is buying weapons. It is, of course, trying to beef up its defense, but they also know that there is only little that they can do. uh, to be very honest, the government has done very little to actually aggravate the Chinese. She has not said anything about the 1992 consensus, but she's not also denied it. Okay, she's not said anything about it. She's just kept quiet about it, right? And she has done, in fact, the actions that China has done has kind of raised maybe this issue more in Taiwan because even before when Hong Kong issue happened, I happened to be in Taiwan in 2014. I have seen there was a change. I mean, if at all Chinese actions will do is get more votes for Tsai Ing-wen's government. Okay, because 2014 I was there, I witnessed the change in the students, the change in many people that I used to talk to. There was a demonstration in NCCU also. I think this is just before Manoj came, maybe a year before Manoj came. Then we had a lot of, demonstrations in NCCU. And I spoke to many people, and a few people told me that we are not going to vote for KMT because we don't want to be where, Hong Kong is. And again in 2019, when it happened, I, happened to be there. And again, I witnessed the same thing. I mean, Tsai Ing-wen's popularity was actually declining, but thanks to Hong Kong and Chinese action, it actually went up. So I think right now, yes, what Taiwanese government is looking at is expanding its global footprint in the sense of getting more support from countries and maybe let their voice heard internationally. And of course, they are beefing up their defense also. There's no doubt they are buying a lot of equipment from the US. We know about it. There's a lot of data about it. So so I think this is the situation. I mean, according to me, like that military reunification is at least not happening. Xi Jinping will have to risk a lot.
Right, right. Absolutely, Namrata ji. And like you mentioned, I think the political climate in Taiwan has shifted very decisively towards a more stronger and in favor of a more stronger stance towards China. And I was also looking at the domestic politics. I think the opposition KMT, the current chief Andrew Hisya, has also made some sort of an overtures towards taking up a stance like that. Although I think the KMT has its own legacy and has different views within the party. So I think the upcoming election, the local election, also might be interesting to watch for that reason. Um, uh, Sriparna ji, if I can ask you about also the broader foreign policy questions that China faces, going forward. Now, you had written about China's relationship with Russia. Um, and this is, of course, at a time when it has its own relationship with the West and US in particular. I mean, there is an ongoing rivalry between the US and China. And there's a lot that has happened on the geopolitical front. So, how do you see China sort of emerging out of this, and what sort of policies it might adopt with respect to the West, even in Europe and the various other powers that we see?
So, China has been following the debacle, if I may put it that way, in Ukraine. Initially it was assumed, especially by Russia, by Putin, that it's going to be a quick victory. We go in and we destroy everything, we come back with a quick victory. But that did not really happen. There have been a lot of talks about whether there was a collusion between China and Russia on this entire debacle in Ukraine. I would say, and even US intelligence has said it, that there was definitely a collusion. Um, Days before Putin actually sent in the Russian army into Ukraine, there was a reduction or a complete withdrawal of troops from the Russia-China border, because they were required to be elsewhere. So there was definitely a talk, and Putin felt comfortable that China is not really going to do anything which is not amicable to Russia. And well, they could put in, move those number of soldiers into Ukraine. So there was definitely a discussion. And as all of us know, on February 4th, the two sides talked about this no limits partnership between the two countries. So there's definitely a collusion between the two. Does China benefit from, sticking to Russia, or does it really want to move away? China is actually finding itself in a very tricky situation at the moment. If you look at China's response to the entire crisis in Ukraine, it's largely a three-pronged approach. On the diplomatic front, it's been ambiguous, it's been abstaining to show that it does not really want to take sides, it's a responsible power, etc. But the conversations, telephonic conversations which Xi Jinping and Putin have, the content of it shows otherwise, because they talk about sovereignty, respecting boundaries, etc. Secondly, domestically, while China, internationally has been abstaining, the state-controlled media and the social media have been throwing in their weight behind Putin, saying that what Putin is doing is right and he's taking on Western hegemony, etc., etc. There's a complete support of Russia within China. Thirdly, Ukraine is an important player, is an important node in the BRI. So China cannot let go of it completely. Now, if you look at trade and economic rise has been the linchpin of China's rise as an important player in international politics. How much trade does China have with Russia? Minuscule as compared to the trade that it has with the US and with the EU. So it would not want to burn its economic bridges, especially not now when its GDP growth rate, as predicted by the IMF, is somewhere around 2.5%. So China finds itself in a very difficult position. It is only hanging on, or it's showing some sort of bonhomie with Russia because they have a common enemy in the West and in the US, and that's about it. Even before 2020, even before February 24th happened, there were a lot of lingering issues between Russia and China. And I'll just give one example: demographic changes in the Far East. Because so much of Chinese labor had gone in. Russians are also pretty strong, and they're also they really love their language and their culture. just the way that the Chinese do. So they did not really love the demographic changes. Language has been completely, Russian language has been wiped out. You see posters and hoardings and writings in Chinese. So that's one issue. China's outreach into Central Asia, which was traditionally Russia's backyard, again, not acceptable. These were outstanding issues between Russia and China. But February 24th happened. They have a common enemy in the West. So China is in a pretty difficult situation right now. And it wasn't a decisive victory for Russia, which is saddening for China, to say the least, because they would have probably wanted the same sort of, if Russia really had the decisive victory, probably they would have drawn lessons and keeping their own situations in mind, thought of doing something similar, getting a quick decisive victory in Taiwan. But that hasn't really happened. So China is in a difficult position right now.
Right. Thank you, Sriparna ji, for sharing that overview on Chinese foreign policy, particularly the Russia angle, which I think is going to be very important for us in India, because it actually will define how we engage with Russia as well. And it's important to be aware of the various aspects of the relationship, so that our policy can be crafted accordingly. I wanted to shift focus a little bit and talk about the India-Taiwan relationship now, and also look at, and if Namrata ji, if I could ask you about this, can you tell us about how India and Taiwan have been strengthening their relations in recent years, and also what have we done together, and also what more could we do together?
Okay. Thanks for the question, Kamal. I think recent past, if you ask me how we have been strengthening our relationship, I think a lot has been going on, and especially in few sectors, like especially the economic ties. I'll give you a few figures. So India's economic interaction with Taiwan has gained momentum in the past decade, with several bilateral agreements in agriculture, investments, heritage railways, civil aviation, industrial cooperation, SME cooperation, and customs cooperation, among others. So we have signed a lot of bilateral agreements. Then the cumulative FDI inflow from Taiwan to India are worth 755 million US dollars, and this is from April 2000 to June 2022. The bilateral trade between India and Taiwan is also on the rise. It has increased from 2 billion US dollars in 2006 to 5.7 billion in 2020, which is like a 185% growth. And according to the data that has been given by the Taiwan Economic and Cultural Center in India, bilateral trade hit a new record in 2021 at over 7 billion US dollars, and over 120 Taiwanese companies have been operating in India with cumulative investments which are over 2.3 billion US dollars. And this year, especially, the State Bank of India, it has raised 300 million US dollars issuing Taiwanese Formosa bonds. The name is the Formosa bonds, and the first Indian entity to do so. Now, these bonds will be issued through its London branch as of January 20, on January 26th. Will be listed on Taipei Exchange, Singapore Stock Exchange, and India International Exchange at GIFT City. So economic ties, yes, we are doing a lot. They are looking at Maharashtra as one of the places where they really want to invest, and then of course there is Karnataka. They have huge investments even in Tamil Nadu, and they are looking at expanding it. Gujarat is one of the states. So economic relationship, yes, and educational. I mean, academic exchanges or in education also. There have been a lot of important announcements and achievements that have been done. So it was in 2010 actually that the Foundation of International Cooperation in Higher Education of Taiwan signed an MOU with the Association of Indian Universities. Now this is important. Why? Because mutually both countries will recognize each other's academic degrees and certificates. And this is very important when we are having educational exchange with any country. Then there are 19 Taiwan education centers that have been set up in universities in India, and there are more than 22 teachers that are teaching Mandarin Chinese here. And within India, 8,000 Indian students have enrolled themselves in Mandarin courses that are being taught by Taiwanese. So this is somewhere where we have improved. In the number of students also, the data is 2019 is 2,783 Indian students. It has dropped because of the COVID restrictions, but I'm sure once the restrictions are, you know, um, they are no longer there, which they have just opened, I think, a couple of days back. So I think the students will get a chance to, go. Then we have also had two Indo-Taiwan University Vice Chancellors Forum, where both countries' Vice Chancellors have actually come together to discuss cooperation. And in this, I think one of the very important cooperation also is between the National Chiao Tung University in Sinchu. This has a joint PhD program with IIT Delhi, IIT Kanpur, and IIT Bombay. So the students spend half the time that they do their engineering in India and half in Taiwan. And they have one supervisor from Taiwan and one from India. So this is very important. I think it's important and a good initiative for both India and Taiwan. And then, of course, there has also been, I think, one of the key highlights which I really want to highlight, and I think Manoj has also written about it, is that India-Taiwan, it touched a new high when India launched its PSLV C-52 satellite on February 14, 2021. So this had a student satellite, Inspires at 1, which was jointly, developed with Taiwan, along with Singapore and USA. And I think it is the first time that India has joined hands with Taiwan with respect to its space security. And we also have seen an up, how do I see, a lot of interaction between Indian and Taiwanese think tank. We have seen a lot of MOUs being signed between the two think tanks. Universities, of course, are also signing a lot of MOUs individually with Taiwanese universities. So we have seen improvement in India-Taiwan relations at many levels. And we've also had exchange MPs visiting the parliamentary exchange, the friendship association that was formulated. We also have seen some MPs going. Manoj has just mentioned that there was a recent visit by an Indian, MP from Odisha. So all these things are happening. But there are still, ways in which we can work out and improve the relationship. There are many areas where we can improve the relationship, or where on which we can actually build on. So a few of them, of course, are that a lot of scholarships that the Taiwanese government is giving is in the science field. A lot of people who are studying STEM are going from India to Taiwan. So one of the areas is that the Taiwan can promote programs for students from the fields of social science, humanities, arts, and international relations. I think that is very important when it comes to India, Taiwan, and Taiwan has been pushing for FTA, and India will not sign an FTA with Taiwan. So rather than being stuck on FTA, what Taiwan can do, or what India and Taiwan can do together, is identify sectors which are very important, and in those sectors they can have some privileges, they can have some leeways, and those sectors can be like FTAs for that sector, rather than going for an out and out FTA, because I know the Taiwanese have been really rooting for that. But if that's not happening, then let's find a solution and have a sector wise this thing. And then I think we should work on our strategic, or you can call it defense ties. We can have Mandarin teachers teaching to our army personnel here. If, of course, it's a problem them going to Taiwan and studying Mandarin there, but the Mandarin teachers can do it here. This will help the defense personnel understand, China more, because many of them cannot read and write Mandarin. Because already our foreign services candidates are actually going to Taiwan now to learn Mandarin. Initially, they used to go to Hong Kong, But now, because of the changes in Hong Kong, now they are going to Taiwan. So this is also a big step, which we do not talk about. And then, of course, one thing that I say, and I think a lot of my Taiwanese friends don't agree with it or never discuss about it, is that if India could also engage with a now democratic Taiwan and persuade it to drop its old historical territorial claims. Because Taiwan shares many of its South China claims and also claims on India with PRC that were, initiated by the Chiang Kai-shek government. So I think Taiwan in fact claims to have historical documents supporting its claims, which in a way serves China's cause, and which is also a hindrance in India-Taiwan relations, because many people in the government, defense would question that why should we engage with Taiwan more when Taiwan also claims the same areas as the PRC. So I mean these are the areas where we could actually.
Right. That's very interesting, Namrata ji, and especially the last point that you made. I think not a lot of people know about it, and I think Taiwan has shed a lot of its erstwhile legacies. And I think this could be one of those things which I think can really boost and take India-Taiwan relations to the next level. And like you mentioned, there is a lot that is happening across diplomatic relations, across business and investment, education, and that includes the various avenues that you mentioned, and of course technology and space. It reminded me of the recent a little bit of a tussle between two of our Indian states, between Gujarat and Maharashtra, when there was a joint venture that went to Gujarat instead of Maharashtra. We hope more and more such investments and joint partnerships are undertaken between the two sides. Sriparna ji, would you like to add to that?
So, since Namrata has, already spoken so eloquently and she's touched upon pretty much everything, I just wanted to share this small thing which I noticed this year at, Taiwan's National Day celebrations in New Delhi this year. Taiwan keeps saying that every country has to follow the One China policy. Well, India also adheres to it. And despite the fact that China this year demanded that India again reiterates its adherence to the One China principle, our MEA gave out a statement that we don't need to keep reiterating things. So I think that was a very that was a very direct way of saying that we do what we do. Anyway, since 2010, in our official policy documents, we've not been really talking about this One China principle. So this year, at the National Day celebrations in New Delhi, I noticed two things. One of them was that on the dais, the Indian flag and the Taiwanese flag were put, right. So the two flags were standing side by side. Something which China has talked about, in its discussions, especially with the US, that the Taiwanese flag should not be on its soil or any country's soil which adheres to the One China policy. But here we are, India's flag and Taiwanese flag on the occasion of Taiwan's National Day celebrations stood side by side. Second, the Indian national anthem was played first, followed by the Taiwanese national anthem. Again, something which China does, and China says that it should not happen because countries should adhere to the One China principle. So, very tacitly, we have been expressing our support for a democracy because we are the world's largest democracy. Taiwan is also a democracy. We do not want militarization of the straits. In the last 2 to 3 years, both India and Taiwan have been at the receiving end of Chinese aggression. India has its own worldview of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, and our stances on peace are not the dubious sort of stances which China has. So in our own little ways, in very tacit ways, we have been showing that we do support a democratic country like Taiwan. So just wanted to share this because this was something that I had observed.
No, that is very interesting, Sriparna ji. Thanks for sharing that. And speaking of again Taiwan and India, Manoj ji, you have spent a lot of years in Taiwan, and you've also traveled extensively, interacting with young Taiwanese students a lot. Tell us about these experiences and how do ordinary Taiwanese people view India?
Thank you, Kamalji. And I would also like to wanted to feel, but I think the two stalwarts of Taiwan studies and China studies extensively explained the nuances of between the triangular relationship, if I would say. Coming to people contact, this is something very bottom to top approach of looking into any sort of bilateral relations. I would say in one of my recent piece, I did say that I'll tell my one of my first experience when I mentioned I'm going to Taiwan, and to my Indian friends, they said that, oh, you are going to join Taliban. I was being told like that, and then I was told that even globally, Taiwan is get confused with the word country Thailand as well. Uh, Whether it's good or bad, Indians kind of linked it to Taliban. I don't know why, but yeah. So that's what happened. So that's the level of I would say the say the knowledge of Taiwan in India is like at back in 2015, 16. But yes, it has definitely moved ahead, especially after in 2020, after we have this Galwan incident, and we have one politician who put up Taiwan national flag on the national day of Taiwan on 10th of October in front of the PRC's. I mean, it did cause a lot of fury against the politician by the Chinese embassy at New Delhi. Yes, that pushed up things, but again, then another from like if I look into my experiences in Taiwan, I would say first of all it was very challenging because the concept itself, like India, was we are automatically taken as some people we are who we are. Like Indians are good in maths, science. So I kept on telling that no, not all Indians are not good at maths and science, because I myself failed in maths couple of times in my school times. So I think that's one biggest stereotypical image that they have about India, especially about our English accents. Second, about that the food is very spicy all the time, and what is milk tea? That we drink milk tea or we eat curry every day. This few things that come across, but my goal was not to tell what. Yes, there was my goal was about all this is to bust all the stereotypes, but also another aspect I Namrata ji also mentioned, and I have written a piece about it as well, about the ties that can go beyond politics, such as space industry, where we do have the ISRO's private arm, and if Taiwan can come up with its own private arm, I think that private to private collaboration is much easier and much more convenient rather than doing a government to government tie up. Another aspect where Taiwanese are very much interested about India is to know about to understand the vast cultural difference and how we manage to run a country like this, how this country is running with so much differences in food, language, and all those things, right? And the again the some of the things that always kept on propping up in among my interaction among the students is the caste system of India. They kind of say like, what is caste system, and it things like this propped up multiple times, like this women's safety of India, whether is India safer for single women to travel to India or not. That was another biggest question that was that I faced. But yeah, that was my goal, like to explain things in a very rational and very open-sided, rather than showing only the one side of the coin. And again, the university where was, and also Miss Namrata, where she was there during the Hong Kong visit, the Hong Kong revolution that this happened back in 2018-19. The NCCU, the students are quite active. The young population is quite active in doing social mobilization, and also there are a lot things that we can learn, that how to do protest in peace. I would say like it's like without destroying the infrastructure, the existing infrastructure. I think that's something that we should learn, and instead of getting violent in multiple times, and things like this. Yes, there are mutual things that we can learn. Just Taiwan has also, because of its low population growth, as per the estimates, and by 2031, the population growth will go into negative. So that's something that China, Taiwan is facing, and it is opening up its border for talents. and most of the Indians who are there are, yes, there is a student body, but the other people who are there are mostly related to tech industry, like working in semiconductors in companies like TSMC, Wistron, MediaTek, all those things. So yes, they do have this kind of opportunities for Indians to go and explore and to have more people to people contact. Direct air link, I think that has to be reopened as soon as possible. COVID, from as we are talking, having this discussion tomorrow, Taiwan is going to opening up its border. I think that will help to restart the direct air link between Taipei and New Delhi, and that will push more Indians to visit, and so do the Taiwanese to visit India as well. And yes, so there's a big lot of things to do, a lot of challenges that has been covered up extensively by Professor Pathak and Ms. Hasija. I'll not touch upon that. So I just being very positive among all the challenges that both sides face. Thank you.
Absolutely, Manojji. That's a great summary, and it's very fascinating to know how India is perceived and the various questions, like you mentioned, students have. We at Chithi Media obviously produce a lot of content on issues like that. So next time you speak to them, please do share our content with them because we do believe at Chithi that it is very important that the world understands India on its own terms and from its authentic voices, rather than a lot of times perspectives and theories which are not necessarily the best fit for understanding India. And you mentioned that Taiwan is opening up its borders again in terms of air travel. I think that's also great for the Taiwanese economy, which has been suffering because of China's coercion, the economic coercion. So hopefully there'll be better times ahead for that. Thank you so much to all our panelists for this fantastic discussion, which has been so insightful, and to discuss, I think, a wide variety of topics from China to what's happening in cross-strait ties to India's relations and India's policies towards this region. I think it's a very interesting time ahead, and we have a lot of interesting events coming up. Like we have discussed the party congress, so I'm sure our viewers have a great overview now to understand and to read what's going to happen. And also, I think later in November we have the local elections in Taiwan. So I hope our viewers are taking away a lot of from this conversation. I would request our viewers to please let us know what you think about the conversation, and if you have questions, do leave them in the comment section. But I would like to thank all my panelists today for joining us on this Vaishali Dialogue. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kamal. It was truly wonderful being here, and all the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. I would request our audience to please subscribe to our channel if you already haven't, and do subscribe to both our channels, Chithi Media and the Festival of Bharat, both where we produce and post content like these. Thank you, take care, and we'll see you again. Namaste.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.